time to have this exclusive interview with you. The Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act is a law that protects everyone, every person from violence, be it a lady, a woman, a young girl, a boy, politicians like you, and everyone. It protects everyone. And also, there are many developments in the FAP Act. The FAP Act covers so many areas that other laws prohibiting sexual and gender-based violence and all other type of violence has not covered. I will first of all congratulate yourself for being the chairman of the committee on the investigation of FAP Act. But before the answer, how true is it that the Jigawa State has domesticated this Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act?
Thank you very much for finding me worthy for this interview. And thank you for congratulating us. Indeed, this is a success story not only for us at the State House of Assembly, but rather for the whole people of Jigawa State. And it's no longer a story, it is a fact that we have passed the Violence Against Persons Prohibition law in Jigawa State. It has been domesticated. It has been passed into law by the Jigawa State House of Assembly on the 17th of February 2021, and it was assented by His Excellency the Executive Governor of Jigawa State, Abubakar, on the 24th. That was a week after it has been passed by the State Assembly. And the bill initially started as a private bill. I sponsored the bill, and it was during the legislative processes after the first reading that the Executive Governor sent an executive bill for domestication of the same act. So maybe that was the reason why it wasn't difficult for us, to be on the same frequency with the executive arm of government, because the mere fact that it started as a private bill and later on executive sent same bill, that means we are operating on the same frequency, on the same level, we have the same passion for the state, and we have interest in protecting all persons residing in Jigawa State.
So what inspired you to sponsor this bill, sir?
Actually, I can say it was part of my campaign promises to my constituents during the campaign. I enjoyed almost 90% support of the female gender. They gave me almost 70% of my votes. I was very close to them, and I knew how vulnerable they are in the society. This issue of sexual assault became a menace in the state. Before, it used to be once in a while, but of recent, it has become a menace. So, and our first duty as legislators is to make laws. And you make law for two reasons. One is when you realize there's an issue disturbing the people in a certain community. And when we realized that this issue is becoming so rampant in the state, the issue of sexual assault, then we realized the second reason, that is who are vulnerable among the community. And we realized it is mostly the women, folks, and the kids, and the people with special need. If you look at the chart of the number of cases of sexual assault cases in the state, you will see that almost 70% the victims falls in one of these categories. Ladies, kids, that is minors, and the people with special needs, they are the victims. So we decided to come up with this beautiful piece of legislation to domesticate it, as it has already been passed by the National Assembly since 2015. We've been working on it, and one good thing about it is all stakeholders were involved right from the initial stage. We had a public hearing whereby all traditional rulers, the ulama, that is the religious leaders, youth associations, civil society organizations protecting or fighting against violence against persons in the state, and all stakeholders in the justice sector, including the Sharia court, Judges Association, the Magistrate Courts Association of Nigeria, and even the NBA, including the Muslim Lawyers Association of Nigeria. FIDA too was included, the police, civil defense, and even the Legal Aid Council. So we had a discussion. We went through the law, through the bill together, and we collected their submissions. We later on went back and draft a proposal. We know it is a domestication, so we can't copy it verbatim. It has to be adapted. We have to adopt it based on our peculiarities. One, to make it maybe compliant with the Sharia law, because majority of us are Muslims. And secondly, to make it in line with our traditions and cultures as Hausa, Fulani, Kanuri people. And after that, we also went for study tour. We went to Kaduna because they passed there on before us. We went and discussed with them. We met them at the State Assembly. We discussed with the group and the committee, Justice and Judiciary Committee. We discussed the challenges they faced during the legislative processes and even during the implementation period. So we learned a lot from them, and we also went to Yobe State that also passed similar law before us. So we did conduct a lot of researches, even why is it that this case of sexual assault is becoming rampant in the state. So we did a lot of work before we come up with the law.
The Jigawa State must be so lucky to have you, sir, for having a passion to protect women and children. But sir, tell us more, Honourable, how does the VAP Act protect the people of Jigawa State now?
Yeah, like I am saying, there is this common saying that whom much is given, much is expected. In my constituency, I received the highest number in history as far as election of a member of State Assembly is concerned. And majority, I received almost 30,000 votes. And believe you me, almost 20,000 votes came from women. So I know their value, and I associated with them a lot during the campaign period, and I realized how vulnerable they are. And one thing I also realized is that as long as we want to become safe and developed, we have to protect the women folk, because they are the mothers, they are in charge of bringing of children. So they are the first teachers. Once they are safe, they are protected. I think our communities will be protected. So we think that they deserve this, because the number, at the rate, the number of sexual assault cases are coming up is disturbing. Mostly, right thinking person will have a sound sleep in this community with this number of cases coming up. None of us is safe, as you said earlier. And what we did was to, study the penal code law that defined rape and provides punishment for rape. And this law was promulgated in the year 1958 also. So you can see it has been done a long period of time, and it is almost obsolete. One, the punishment is not stiff. Two, even the definition. Because so many number of cases end up, so many accused persons end up scotting free before the courts of law, because there is no way, no matter how passionate the judge is, crime is a crime. There is no way you can convict someone without a clear definition of that particular action as a crime in any piece of legislation. So the definition was not encompassing, it wasn't that expatiated. So under the penal code, you can only rape a woman or a girl, and if the case is sodomy, it cannot be called rape too, because you can't sodomize a girl or a woman. Three, you can't sodomize a man or a boy based on the definition. So you have to expand the definition to include both gender, to even the female folks, sodomy is a rape too. And even the issue of consent. Under the penal code is 14 years, but we now raise it up to 17 years. So once you have a sexual intercourse with a girl or a boy or a man, as long as he is 17 down, it's a rape. He can't consent or she can't give a consent. And we also make the punishment stiffer. Now there is no, the minimum punishment we can give a rapist is life imprisonment or death sentence, no option of fine. And there is also, we also introduce what we call compensation. Yeah. The minimum a victim of rape will receive is the sum of 500,000 naira because of the psychological trauma they undergo. In fact, most of them end up becoming mentally retarded because of their experience. And the most unfortunate thing is majority of them are small kids. So we also include that in the new verb. And so many things, maybe because of our discussion, we are able to.
So, Honourable, was there any law before the VAP Act came into being in Jigawa State that protects not just rape but also women from such of domestic violence? That domestic violence in a way that a husband beating his wife, his children, or stuff like that, or a madam beating her maid, you understand, her house help, or maybe someone is residing with you and you decided to unleash domestic violence on the person.
Yeah, the general law, there is a penal code law, as I said earlier, but as I said, the law is almost obsolete. This is a law that was made since 1958, so government, and law is like human being. It is developing with age, with time, because the criminals do even try to run faster than the laws. So the law has to be reviewed periodically in order to catch up with time. Under the penal code, there is what we call battery and assault. So it is more of a general offense and punishment. The punishment is not stiffer, the definition is not that clear, but this particular law is dealing with anything that is violence against persons. So it is more of a specific law that is dealing or prohibiting violence against persons, unlike the penal code that is dealing with all crimes in general.
So I know in the Hausa Fulani culture, like you said, and mostly the culture, not religious aspects, but on the culture of Hausa Fulani, they deem it normal for a husband to beat his wife or stuff like that. So how do you think this law, this VAP Act law, will help in curtailing such culture?
Do you know, the most beautiful thing is that actually it's not a culture, it's not our culture. It's not our culture to beat a woman. And it's also not Islamic. Even though some ulama or some Muslim scholars do believe that it is allowed for a man to beat his wife. But mind you, as I said earlier, during or even after our public hearing, we had to come up with what is called technical committee, whereby all stakeholders were invited for 2 days, whereby we dissect the whole bill from section to section, and we agreed and disagree, and at the end of the day, we come up with the final draft, which is the one that is being passed into law. And one of the scholars there and then said, no, it's un-Islamic for a man to beat his woman. So that was the reason why in the definition section of assault or domestic violence, it is stated clearly that, because even if there are those scholars that believe that it's allowed, they said there are exceptions. You can't beat her on her face. You can't beat her to the extent that you cause injury on her, any part of her body. So it was more or less not beating. It was more or less to express your anger against her, maybe to just tap her in a way to show her that she has offended you. But that cannot be defined to be called a violence. Once there is an injury, honestly speaking, it's a crime, and it has been accepted by all the people. In fact, the people of Jigawa State are overwhelmed with this particular law. The last time I could remember we have a situation like this was when the House of Assembly came up with a law for premarital HIV test. I think since that law, there was no law that we see jubilation throughout the state after passing a particular bill to become a law, like this violence against persons prohibition law of the state. In fact, the level of acceptability can be seen because we were just this afternoon, I was driving to somewhere else when I received a call from Commissioner of Justice, and he was saying, Chairman, after your radio program, so many people were calling and hearing. In fact, in so many mosques in the state, we received a lot of prayers. They prayed for us that we did well. In fact, they termed it as jihad. That was the term most of the scholars used in expressing their happiness after we did this wonderful job. One man was arrested 2 days after the executive governor has put his assent in my constituency. So to show you that the people have already accepted it. In fact, his family were crying. They just considered him as a dead person because of the level of sensitization that was being carried out throughout the state and the level of acceptability.
Interesting. So, Honourable, I understand that the residents are aware that the law has been domesticated in Jigawa State. But what is the extent of the awareness being created on how the law protects the people of Jigawa State? I mean, the awareness. Are the people aware of how this law protects them from sexual and gender-based violence and from all other sorts of violence?
Yeah. Certainly, like I said earlier, we carried out a lot of sensitization. And even right from the beginning, from the initial stage, we involved the public throughout the processes. And even after, since this law has been passed, I think there was no day that we do not have a kind of either press conference or radio programs or interview with journalists. There's a lot of sensitization going on. And Mike, we also have a civil society coalition for civil society organizations fighting against violence against persons in the state, headed by Vilde. In fact, they were part of the initiators of this particular bill. So they are in the communities and they have been sensitizing the communities and they are part of everything. In fact, during the last press conference we had on last week, Thursday, I think, we advised all local governments to come up with maybe civil society organizations for fighting against violence against persons in order for them to be following up cases of violence against persons and to be reporting to the relevant authorities and to be following it up in case there was any attempt for compromise along the line. They will be able to expose it, and we even ask them to be working hand in hand with the members of the press.
So during this sensitization, Honourable, was there also sensitization or is there a sensitization currently ongoing on encouraging women and girls to break the silence after being raped, to stop protecting the perpetrators?
Certainly, that's what we have been doing. In fact, I will always quote this example. In my own constituency, there was this particular woman, Haja Nini. That woman alone, once she is aware any sexual assault in the whole local government or constituency, no judge, no police will dare try to compromise that case, because she knew that she can go to any extent to report and expose the matter. So, and I think it is the role of the members of the community to follow suit and come up with organizations in all the communities once they are up to the task, I think the law will witness 100% implementation.
Honourable, I am certain that you know that mostly rape cases they stay long during judicial process before the perpetrator being sent to jail or before the court takes action against the perpetrator or before survivors get justice. It takes very long.
We take care of that aspect in this new law. We take care of that because that was the reason why I said all stakeholders were involved. The Minister of Justice, the Director of Public Prosecution, the Law Officers Association of Nigeria were all part of the technical committee. So we analyzed and discussed the procedure before, and we came up with changes and innovations whereby all these leeways will be covered, and minimize the number of cases that the prosecution lose before trial or during trials in our court of laws. That is one. Secondly, I was a former prosecutor. I have been a prosecutor for 13 years, so I know what it takes. I know how difficult it used to be to prove sexual assault cases.
So can you share a bit with us what the changes that was made?
It was part of some of the changes includes even the year of consent, the age limit, that is from 14 to 17, and even the definition, because like we said earlier, under the penal code, you can only commit rape when there was penetration through the vagina. So if it is sodomy, it cannot be called rape, and you can't, because boys and girls or men do not have vagina, so that means even if they are sodomized, they cannot be sentenced, or the person cannot be said to commit rape. So all these things, even expansion of the definition, covered a lot of leeways that used to the rapists used by escaping justice before. So many things.
As a legal practitioner, Honourable, I am